What if I told you that the apps you use every single day, platforms owned by Meta and YouTube, have just been officially declared harmful in a US court of law? Not by critics, not by influencers, but by a jury verdict that could completely change the future of social media as we know it. This is one of the biggest tech trials of the decade, and it started with a young woman who decided to take on some of the most powerful companies in the world, and she actually won. The case centered around a 20-year-old plaintiff who argued that her exposure to these platforms from a very young age, watching YouTube from just 6 years old, and later using Instagram as a child, led to severe addiction like behavior that impacted her mental health. What made this case different and frankly shocking is that the jury agreed that these platforms were not just passively used by her, but were actively designed in ways that encouraged compulsive use, keeping her hooked for longer periods of time through features like infinite scrolling, autoplay videos, and algorithm driven content that constantly feeds users exactly what they want to see next. After weeks of intense courtroom arguments and over 40 hours of jury deliberation, the verdict finally came in, and it was historic. Both Meta and YouTube were found negligent, meaning the jury believed they failed to adequately warn users about the risks associated with prolonged use of their platforms. Even more significant, the jury held them financially responsible, awarding millions of dollars in damages, with Meta taking on the majority of the blame. This is a massive shift in how the legal system views social media companies. Because for years, these platforms have operated under the idea that they are simply neutral tools, not responsible for how users behave on them. But this verdict challenges that idea directly, suggesting that the very design of these platforms, the endless feeds, the notifications engineered to grab attention, the algorithms that learn user behavior, may actually play a direct role in creating harmful usage patterns. During the trial, lawyers described these systems as a form of engineering addiction, arguing that companies deliberately use psychological techniques to maximize engagement. And if you think about your own experience, it starts to make sense. How many times have you opened YouTube or Instagram for just a few minutes, only to realize an hour or more has passed without you even noticing? That's not random. That's the result of highly sophisticated design choices aimed at keeping you engaged for as long as possible. However, both companies have strongly pushed back against these claims. They argue that mental health is a complex issue that cannot be blamed on a single factor, and that users ultimately have control over how much time they spend online. YouTube has even gone as far as to compare itself to traditional television, suggesting it should not be treated as a uniquely harmful platform. And importantly, both companies are expected to appeal the verdict, meaning this legal battle is far from over. But here's why this case really matters. It's not just about one person or one lawsuit. This is being seen as a test case, a potential turning point, because there are already more than 1,000 similar lawsuits waiting in line, brought by families and communities who believe social media has caused harm, especially to younger users. And now, with this verdict in place, those cases suddenly have a precedent to build on. This could lead to a wave of legal challenges, similar to what we saw with tobacco companies or pharmaceutical firms during the opioid crisis, where corporations were eventually forced to change their practices and pay massive settlements. The implications are enormous, not just for tech companies, but for anyone who uses social media, which, realistically, is almost everyone. At the heart of this entire issue is a much bigger question. Are social media platforms actually addictive in the same way substances can be? Or are we simply struggling to manage our own habits in a digital world that's designed to be engaging? Experts are still divided on this, with some calling it true addiction and others describing it as problematic overuse. But regardless of the label, one thing is clear. These platforms are built to capture and hold your attention, because attention is the most valuable currency in the digital economy. The longer you stay, the more ads you see, and the more money the platform makes. It's a simple equation, but one with potentially serious consequences. And when you bring it down to a personal level, it becomes even more real. Think about how often you check your phone without even thinking, or how easily you get pulled into a scroll session that lasts far longer than you intended. Now imagine growing up with that from early childhood, without boundaries or awareness of how these systems work. That's exactly what this case highlighted, and it's a scenario that millions of young users around the world can relate to. Looking ahead, this verdict could open the door to major changes, more lawsuits, stricter government regulations, and possibly even redesigns of core platform features like infinite scroll and autoplay. We could see stronger protections for younger users, more transparency in how algorithms operate, and clearer warnings about potential risks. Or, on the other hand, big tech could fight back hard, dragging these legal battles out for years and slowing down any real change. But one thing is certain, this case has started a conversation that isn't going away anytime soon. It forces us to confront an uncomfortable reality that the platforms we rely on for entertainment, information, and connection may not always have our best interests in mind. They are designed to keep us engaged, to keep us scrolling, to keep us coming back. So the real question isn't just whether social media is addictive. The real question is whether we are truly in control of our usage, or whether, in some ways, these platforms